From Oklahoma jail cells to dunking on Michael Jordan, the story of John Starks is like no other in the NBA. Undersized and underappreciated, the Tulsa native has had to battle hardships and setbacks on his way to becoming an icon in the Big Apple. And the craziest part of it all? You've probably never heard of him. But before he was posterizing Black Jesus and leading the Knicks to an NBA Finals appearance, John Starks was just a weekend hooper out in Oklahoma, stacking shelves and struggling to stay out of trouble. Starks came from a big family, with 7 brothers and sisters, all from different dads. This often resulted in pickup games in the backyard that were brutal and bloody. But Starks wasn't allowed to cry, and instead learned how to hit back and hit back harder. With his family struggling financially, he had to figure out a way to pay for college. Starks worked at a grocery store to make some money and had to miss out on playing high school hoops. He played just 1 season of basketball at Tulsa Central High School, and as a result, failed to get any college scholarships. In 1984, he enrolled at Rogers State, hoping to play on the basketball team. He made the roster but quickly found his new life was beginning to fall apart. Starks rode the bench as a backup for injured starters and averaged 0 minutes for Rogers State, and before his freshman season was even over, he got himself expelled for stealing from another teammate. The youngster spent 5 days in county jail, after which he was transferred to nearby northern Oklahoma, where he was given another chance. There, he actually made the starting 5, playing well and averaging 11 points per game. But trouble was in Starks' DNA, and he was expelled once again after he got caught smoking weed in his dorm room. With his second chance over, Starks quit basketball for good. He enrolled at Tulsa Junior College and planned to pursue a degree in business, even getting his old job back bagging groceries at a nearby Safeway. After a semester attending classes and stocking shelves, Starks asked himself, "Is this really everything I want out of life?" He started playing pickup basketball on the weekend, and that's when a coach for Oklahoma Junior College approached Starks and urged him to try out for his team. He gave Starks $200 to help pay for his college textbooks, and the Tulsa point guard agreed. It took no time for Starks to earn himself a starting role at his new junior college. He averaged 26 points and 10 rebounds per game, attracting national attention for the first time in his career. But while his on-court performance had shown clear improvement, off-court things still weren't perfect. While at OJC, Starks got himself in a number of tough spots. One time, Starks missed the team bus because he was off getting married. He cut the reception short and made the 2.5-hour drive in 1 hour and 45 minutes, getting pulled over along the way for speeding. Still in his wedding suit, he made it to the game by halftime and dropped 22 points in an OJC win. Eventually, he earned himself a full-ride scholarship to Oklahoma State's D1 program, and Starks balled out in what would be his final year of college hoops. But when he declared for the 1988 draft that summer, he went undrafted. Nobody wanted to take the risk of signing a guy who'd played in 4 colleges in 4 years and had recurring legal problems. Lucky for Starks, though, Golden State changed their mind and gave him a shot, signing him as a free agent before the start of the season. Unfortunately for Starks, though, the Warriors had also signed that season's Rookie of the Year, point guard Mitch Richmond, and Starks only got limited playing time. By the end of the '88 season, Starks was cut. Nobody wanted him, and for the second time in his life, Starks seriously considered giving up basketball for good. He instead decided to take his talent to the minor leagues, signing for the Cedar Rapids Silver Bullets just in time for the '89 season to begin. There, he finally stopped taking his basketball talents for granted. He stopped getting in trouble with the law and grinded his butt off with one goal in mind: the NBA. Humbled and still hungry to prove himself, the New York Knicks reached out and offered the point guard a 1-day contract to try out for their team. Not one to let opportunities pass him by, Starks set out to make an impression on the New York coaching staff. The 6'4" point guard looked around the gym and picked out his next victim, All-Star and Knicks living legend, Patrick Ewing. Starks tried to put Ewing on a poster, throwing down a mean dunk on the 3-time All-NBA defensive team player. Ewing was pissed. "Who the bleep does this kid think he is?" said Ewing. "Probably." He set out to make sure it didn't happen again, and on the very next play, Big Pat slammed into Starks, sending the point guard hard to the ground. Ewing didn't know it, but he just helped to create a New York legend. You see, NBA rules stipulate that you can't release a player while he's injured, and since Starks had technically signed for the Knicks on a 1-day contract, he was allowed to stay and practice with the organization while he rehabbed. 1 day turned into 3 months, during which time the Knicks head coach Pat Riley fell in love with what he was seeing. Riley was a no-nonsense kind of guy, and John Starks fit in perfectly with that brand of tough, never-give-up style of basketball that New York was spearheading. Once his knee healed up, he earned himself a spot on the New York Knicks starting lineup. During his first few years in the Big Apple, Starks was all about defense. He proved a solid and physical force outside of the arc that frustrated guards getting under their skin with his fiery personality. But in 1993, during a playoff game against the Pacers, Starks let that fiery personality get the better of him. After exchanging some words with Pacers star Reggie Miller, Starks headbutted him and got himself ejected, losing the game for New York. This was no doubt a low point in Starks' career, but he was used to pushing through the noise and proving he deserved to be there. The Knicks went on to have a standout season that year and made it to the playoffs as the #1 seed in the East. They got all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, where they would have to defeat Michael Jordan and the Bulls if they wanted a chance to win the chip. New York took Game 1 and was showing signs of taking Game 2 as they held a 3-point lead against last year's champions. Marked by Bulls point guard B.J. Armstrong, Starks brings up the ball, shaking off his man just outside the arc and driving to the baseline with speed. 6'4" Starks goes head-to-head with 6'10" all-defensive player Horace Grant, and nobody believes their eyes when he takes to the air. And if that wasn't enough, Michael Jordan jumps to meet Starks at the rim, forming a formidable wall of Bulls' defensive talent. But Starks couldn't care less. He dunked the ball on both Jordan and Grant at the same time, cementing his status as a legend and creating one of the most iconic dunks in Knicks and NBA playoff history. If you look up top dunks in NBA playoff history, you'll see Starks' dunk always end up in the top 5. New York won by 5 points, and Starks' offensive showcase was the highlight of the night. MJ said, "I didn't know about him in college, but I know about him now." Unfortunately for New York, Chicago rallied, winning the series and rounding off their first three-peat of the decade. The Knicks went home empty-handed. But the '94 season promised to be different. MJ was off playing baseball, and the Knicks knew they had no real threats standing in their way. They had the talent, they had the drive, now they had the opportunity. Starks became an all-star that season, averaging 19 points and 6 assists a night, and played a huge part in helping New York beat the Bulls and Pacers on their way to the franchise's first finals appearance since 1973. But tragedy struck, and right before New York was about to begin their series against the Houston Rockets, John Starks received some bad news. His father had died, and he had to catch a flight back home to the funeral ASAP. When he returned, it was obvious that Starks wasn't all there. In Game 1, Starks went 3 for 18, where the Knicks lost to Houston, and there was serious talk about Starks' ability to continue the series. But at this point in his career, John Starks had made a name for himself as a guy who knows how to bounce back. And bounce back he did. He helped New York establish a 3-2 lead in the series, averaging 20 points and 7 assists on their way to a Game 6 matchup back in the Lone Star State. The game was a close one, and in the dying seconds of Game 6, Starks posted up for a game-winning three-pointer. But two-time Defensive Player of the Year Hakeem Olajuwon blocked his shot, securing the Rockets a win and forcing Game 7. In Game 7, John Starks had one of the worst performances of his entire NBA career, going 2 for 18 from the field and making just 1 of 10 shots in the fourth quarter. New York lost, and John Starks went home with a reputation no NBA player wants to have: as a choker. You all remember that iconic Reggie Miller choking taunt. Yeah, he was doing that to Starks. When the two teams met again in the playoffs the following year, Miller decided to take John Starks' soul. With 20 seconds left in the game, Miller scores 6 points in 5 seconds, putting Indiana in the lead, but Starks gets fouled and goes to the line with a chance to win it for New York. He missed the first shot. They only needed 1 bucket to stay ahead. Starks looked nervous and bricks it. Miller sinks both his free throws at the other end of the court, and Indiana wins it, sending New York home in one of the most shocking losses in NBA playoff history. If you're not from New York, this is the John Starks you remember. A solid defensive guy who just couldn't handle the pressure. But for Knicks fans, Starks is the guy who dunked over Michael Jordan, the fiery competitor who helped their franchise almost, and I mean almost, win it all. But the fact that he even got there, got to play in an NBA Finals, got to face off against some of the greatest players in NBA history is a downright miracle. The former grocery store bagger and Roger College bench warmer played 13 seasons in the NBA, becoming a Knicks icon in the process. Even today, if you look around Madison Square Garden during Knicks games, after Patrick Ewing jerseys, John Starks jerseys are the ones you see next. Anytime you go to a Knicks game, one of the most thunderous ovations that you'll hear from the crowd is anytime John Starks is shown on the big screen. Choker or not, John Starks proves that anything is possible if you're willing to dunk on the biggest guy in the room.